What do you think of when you hear this tune? Now, a lot of you may have said the NFL draft, but for me personally, over the years, this sound has become synonymous with trades. Everybody loves trades. They're maybe the most exciting things about sports outside of the games themselves, mostly because of the unpredictability of it all. We all know when free agency and the NFL draft are happening, but sometimes big blockbuster trades can happen almost out of nowhere, like when Christian McCaffrey got traded to the 49ers immediately following a Thursday night football game. Over the past 2 decades, the Giants have been involved in a handful of trades. A few of my personal favorites include acquiring John Beeson in 2013 and shipping Kadarius Toney out of town in 2022. But what about the trades that almost happened? They were close to getting done, but for one reason or another, they just fell through. It always feels like once rumors die down, people just forget about potential trades that could have been potentially franchise-altering ones. Today, I'm ranking the top 6 Giants trades that almost happened over the past 2 decades. I'll be looking at a few things. First, the team at the time of the rumors. Secondly, what the projected return was or what it would have cost to acquire said player or draft capital. And number 3, what the potential ripple effects could have been for the long term of the franchise. But before we get started, some honorable mentions. Odell Beckham Jr., but to a different team. After that fateful catch on Sunday Night Football, it felt like OBJ was perpetually being mentioned in trade rumors. Of course, the Giants eventually did trade Odell, along with Olivier Vernon, to the Cleveland Browns in exchange for Kevin Zeitler, Jabril Peppers, and 2 picks. One of those picks turned into Dexter Lawrence, and one of them turned into O'Shane Ximines. I can't lie, I've always wondered what packages from other teams may have looked like. But it's tough to be upset, even in hindsight, about landing Sexy Dexy. Trading up for Patrick Mahomes. I'm not including this one on the list proper for a few reasons. First and foremost, I think the sheer cost of moving from the 23rd overall pick up to, let's say, the top 12 would have been way too rich for a team that was looking to run it back after an 11-5 season. Secondly, we all know how terrible the 2017 season was. Because of that, I really don't think that was the right environment or atmosphere for Mahomes to develop into the player that he is today. I don't think it's a stretch to say at all that under Ben McAdoo, Mahomes never would have reached his full potential. But as for Ben McAdoo being right about Patrick Mahomes, something broken clock right twice a day. And now, onto the main list. Number 6, trading up for Drake May in 2024. Okay, this one kind of feels like cheating because of how recent it is, but because it's so top of mind, I felt like it was only natural to start the list with this. Yes, as it's now common knowledge thanks to the good folks at Hard Knocks, the Giants 100% tried to trade up with the New England Patriots to the number 3 overall spot in order to draft a quarterback. No, they were not trading up for Joe Alt. So funny to look back at that. So if it had been possible to do so without giving up the farm, the Giants were absolutely looking to trade up for a quarterback. The only question is, which one? I think we've all seen it by now, but there was a clip in Hard Knocks where head coach Brian Daboll says that he's seen enough from Jaden Daniels to feel comfortable about trading up for him. I'm sure the Giants did have a very high grade on Jaden Daniels, but I also think they're smart enough to understand that Washington was probably locked in on him at the pick at number 2. So it may seem obvious to say, but I think it's pretty clear that the quarterback that they were going to try to trade up to number 3 to get was UNC's Drake May. And man, if you're looking for an Eli Manning clone, at least in looks and demeanor, then Drake May is that to a T. Seriously, watch this clip with your eyes closed and tell me that you don't hear Eli Manning.
Yeah, I think it means a lot. I think not only the player I am on the field, but once they met me off the field, kind of what that means to me.
All jokes aside, making a move to go get a new franchise quarterback 20 years after trading for Eli Manning would have been monumental. But obviously, the Giants weren't able to get a deal done as the Patriots were asking for way too much. We know the Giants were offering 2 first-round picks, one this year and one next year, and probably something extra. Anything more than that, 3 first-round picks, would have been really tough to swallow for an organization that just gave Daniel Jones that huge contract. But with that being said, I think personally I would have done it. While Drake May is rough around the edges in some aspects of his game, I think he has all the physical tools to become a very special player in this league. People are going to think that me saying this is an insult, and I really mean it as a compliment, but he reminds me a lot of Jay Cutler when he was entering the league. I think with the proper coaching, he could become an elite player. But before I move on, I really do just want to say that even though I wanted to trade up for a quarterback, I am very happy with the Malik Neighbors pick. I think he's going to be an absolute stud and an offensive playmaker the Giants have lacked since a certain blonde-haired superstar roamed around East Rutherford. Number 5, Osi Umenyiora, 2011. Truthfully, the back half of OC's career with the Giants, it kind of always felt like his name was being mentioned in trade rumors. Umenyiora, one of the franchise's best pass rushers of all time, was most prominently on the trade block in the summer of 2011. OC was coming off of an unreal 2010 campaign in which he had 11.5 sacks and 10 forced fumbles. Seriously, that is insane levels of production. He was unhappy with his contract situation that year, being due about $6 million in 2011. On August 1st, the Giants gave OC and his agent permission to seek a trade. According to an ESPN article at the time, the Giants' asking price for the strip sack artist was a first-round pick. Just from the asking price alone, a first-round pick, that kind of gives off the impression, to me at least, the Giants were never seriously interested in moving OC. A team would be trading for a then 30-year-old pass rusher who wanted a big new contract, so I just don't see that it was that feasible. And honestly, that's a reason why it isn't higher up on the list. The ordeal was short-lived as no team was willing to give up the draft capital. But what's very interesting to me is, according to the Baltimore Sun and CBS, one of the teams that was most linked to Umenyiora was the New England Patriots. In the 2011 season, Umenyiora appeared in 9 regular season games, tallied 9 sacks, and then 3.5 in the postseason. Although this trade was probably never going to happen, I think it's very fascinating to look back and think about the fact that Big Blue could have sent out Umenyiora to the team they would eventually play in February in the Super Bowl. Number 4, Landon Collins, 2018. I think it's easy for some fans to look at how Landon Collins' career went after he left the Giants and forget about how great he was for a period of time. Drafted with the first pick in the second round in the 2015 draft, Collins came in and was a year 1 starter. His rookie campaign was full of a lot of ups and downs as he was playing out of position at free safety next to Craig Dahl of all people, but he was still able to display the level of physicality and football IQ that made him such a highly touted prospect. The next year, he broke out in a major way, and you could actually make an argument that his sophomore rise was greater than Jason Pierre-Paul's. He finished the 2016 season with 5 interceptions, a pick 6, 4 sacks, 125 tackles, a Pro Bowl nod, and a first-team All-Pro selection in a season that was absolutely robbed of a Defensive Player of the Year honor. I'm sorry, I'm still not over it. Over the next 2 seasons, his play dipped from that All-Pro caliber, but he was still a good player and a captain of the defense. During the 2018 season, the Giants got off to a miserable start, starting 1-7. As the trade deadline quickly approached, it was being rumored the Giants may be interested in trading Collins, among other players, especially with him being on the final year of his contract and retaining him in free agency, no guarantee. At that point in the season, with the way things were going and the fact that there was so much unpredictability in the offseason, I don't think anybody would have blamed the Giants had they decided to move on from Collins. However, they stayed pat and retained Landon, although he ultimately would leave in free agency, signing a 6-year, $84 million contract with Washington. According to Ryan Dunleavy of NJ Advanced Media, the best offer the Giants got for Collins at the deadline was a 4th-round pick. I think what's most intriguing to me about this trade that almost happened is the potential ripple effect it could have caused on future trade deadline deals. As previously mentioned, Collins was a 2-time team captain. An argument could be made that offloading a team captain during a tough time sends the wrong message to a locker room, especially one in a contract year. Giants owner John Mara even recently said he doesn't like trading players at the deadline because it, quote, almost signals that you're giving up on the season. But what if the Giants had traded team captain Landon Collins at the deadline? Would that have set a precedent for future seasons and future trade deadline moves? Now there's a direct parallel that can be made between Landon Collins and the recently departed Xavier McKinney. Both were 2nd-round picks out of Alabama who developed over time within the organization and became team captain. I don't know the answer here, but I'm genuinely curious if trading a player like Landon Collins during 2018 would have made John Mara more receptive to midseason moves during bad time. Number 3, Joe Thomas, 2016. This is only the 2nd episode I've done on this channel, and I've already talked about so many negative things, so let's switch it up for a bit and talk about some positive things, albeit briefly. In 2016, the Giants went 11-5 and reached the postseason for the first time since 2011. Their calling card was unquestionably their defense. NYPD was ferocious and formidable and helped propel them to many wins. On offense, things weren't so pristine. Eli Manning, in his year 35 season, was as durable as ever, but was showing clear signs of decline after a year in which he posted career highs in both passing touchdowns and passer rating. The unit was a one-trick pony, relying on Odell Beckham Jr. to make game-changing play after game-changing play, although he did do that quite often. The main culprit for the offense's mediocrity was the offensive line. While the unit did have a level of leadership and stability in the forms of Justin Pugh and Weston Richburg, the 2 tackles, Eric Flowers and Bobby Hart, struggled immensely all year long. With the season going as positively as it was for the Giants, there were rumors around the trade deadline that they may look to make a move at tackle to try to upgrade the offensive line. The name that was thrown around the most in connection with the Giants was Hall of Fame tackle Joe Thomas. Thomas, one of the NFL's most durable players of all time, was in the midst of a 1-15 season with the Cleveland Browns, and he would have been an absolute godsend for the Giants. At one point, Pro Football Talk said that if Thomas were to get moved, his options were looking like it was going to be either Giants or no one. However, in the same report, it was also noted the Giants may not be ready to give up the draft capital needed to land a player like Thomas. No trade materialized, and the Giants' offensive line struggled for the rest of the season and beyond, an issue we're still talking about today. But what if the Giants had went all in 2016 and swung for the fences and made a trade for Joe Thomas? Well, firstly, I think it's obvious to say the left side of the offensive line would have been solidified with Thomas protecting Eli's blind side. However, I don't think Thomas's addition would have been enough to help the Giants get past the Packers in the postseason, mostly because the main issues that game were the wide receivers catching passes. I think what's the most interesting with this hypothetical Joe Thomas trade is what would have happened the next season and beyond. In real life, Joe Thomas retired after 2017 and a winless season with the Browns. Is it possible that a taste of the playoffs and playing alongside future Hall of Fame quarterback Eli Manning would have been enough to convince Joe Thomas to play a few more seasons? We'll never know for sure, but I will say, I think it's possible. And obviously if that happens, then Nate Solder doesn't get signed to that albatross of a contract a few years later. All in all, this one is a trade I really wish would have happened. Mostly because we never really saw Eli play with a good offensive line toward the back nine of his career. At the very least, trading for Thomas would have made one more shot at glory for Eli a whole lot more possible. Number 2, Tony Gonzalez, 2008. While it may not be number 1 on this list, I think this potential trade is probably the most interesting to me for a few different reasons. In a 2018 interview with The Athletic, Hall of Fame tight end Tony Gonzalez detailed how a failed trade from the Chiefs left him pissed. Back in 2008, Gonzalez believed he was being traded to either the Eagles or the Packers before the deal fell through. However, in the interview, Gonzalez also mentions the Giants as a team that was deep in the negotiation process. As the story goes, Reese did not want to give up the draft pick that was needed to land Tony Gonzalez. At the time, it was rumored it would have taken a 3rd round pick to land Gonzalez. The reason this trade sticks out to me so much and why I find it so personally intriguing is the way the 2008 season unfolded for the G-Men. The Giants stormed out to an 11-1 start to the season, and they looked primed for a Super Bowl repeat. But as we all unfortunately know, things took a drastic turn for the worst on a late November night in a New York City nightclub. That was, of course, the night that Plaxico Burress accidentally shot himself in the leg. Burress never played another down for the Giants, and with no real outside threat, opposing defenses were able to load the box without any fear and stifle the Giants' offensive game plan. Would trading for Tony Gonzalez have been enough to help make up for the loss of Burress? Despite 2008 being his age 32 season, Gonzalez still earned Pro Bowl and All-Pro honors. Gonzalez actually wound up being traded to the Atlanta Falcons in the impending offseason, and he would play there until 2013. During his time with the Falcons, he never finished with fewer than 650 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns, despite his age. When I started writing the script for this segment, I initially had written down that I don't think Tony Gonzalez would have been enough to help the Giants get back to the Super Bowl. But then I watched the film, and I'm now changing my tune. I do think that if the Giants had traded for Tony Gonzalez in 2008, they would have at least gotten back to the NFC Championship game and possibly another Super Bowl. Let's look back at the 2008 divisional round loss to the Eagles, as much as it will pay me to do so. The Giants had five drives stall within the Eagles' 30. The results were as followed: made field goal, missed field goal, made field goal, made field goal, missed field goal. I'm not going to sit here and say that Tony Gonzalez being on the team makes every single one of those drives a touchdown drive, but I do think they probably would have gotten at least one of them. At the very, very least, I think they would have gotten closer to field goal range for John Carney, and maybe he doesn't miss as many as he did. In a game they lost by 12 points, I think having any real significant threat in the passing game, as well as in the red zone, would have been massive. What makes this hypothetical trade even worse to me is the fact that even if Jerry Reese didn't want to give up a draft pick, the Giants had 2 second-round picks and 2 third-round picks in the upcoming draft. What did they do with those picks? One of them turned into good quality starter Will Beatty, and the others turned into Clint Sintum, Travis Beckham, and Ramses Barden. So yeah, would you have preferred Tony Gonzalez over that? I know I would have. And the number 1 Giants trade that almost happened is trading out of number 2 overall in 2018. It only took me 2 episodes into this channel to talk about drafting Saquon Barkley, and I'm honestly a little bit surprised it didn't happen sooner. I don't even know exactly where to begin with this one, but I think what probably makes the most sense is to start with the appointment of Dave Gettleman as general manager. The move to hire Gettleman came after a rare for the Giants midseason firing of both head coach Ben McAdoo and general manager Jerry Reese. Gettleman was viewed almost universally as a mediocre hire at best and a mistake of one at worst. He truly believed he could build around an aging Eli Manning. Anybody remember his comment about if what I saw against Philly wasn't a mirage? And he had the best draft pick the Giants have had since 1981 at his disposal to do so. There are a few intriguing options for the Giants that really could have helped set the franchise up for success in the long term, which is what you want when you're picking that high. Of course, the Giants would have their pick at all but one of the top quarterbacks in that year's draft class. A draft class that included names like Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Sam Darnold. Okay, and Josh Rosen. But perhaps more intriguingly, and the reason it's on this list, there was another option. The Giants could sell off the number 2 overall pick for an absolute king's ransom and help build up a depleted roster. The only issue was, for Dave Gettleman, there was only one option. Saquon Barkley, no matter what. Then, now, and forever. As long as Gettleman had final say, the Giants were 100% selecting the player whom he said was touched by the hand of God. His vision to build around Eli Manning by drafting Saquon Barkley, a player who he said would make everybody on the team better, was flawed in nature and execution, and one that he held with reckless conviction. According to Connor Hughes, the Denver Broncos called the Giants in an attempt to make an offer to try to trade up to draft either Josh Allen or Sam Darnold. They would have offered a lot, and it would have been a really good opportunity for the Giants to mull it over. The only issue? Dave Gettleman did not pick up the phone. He was so locked in on drafting Barkley that he didn't care about what anybody else had to say. He didn't look at any other option. There was nothing that was going to talk him out of drafting Barkley. Not analytics, not positional value, not a chest full of draft picks, not a single damn thing. It's tough to know exactly what the offer from Denver would have been, but you can pretty much safely assume it would have been more than what the Jets had to give the Colts to move up to 6-3. Especially if John Elway and the Broncos were that desperate. In exchange for the number 3 overall pick, the Colts' final total was the number 6 overall pick, 2 2018 second-round picks, a 2018 fifth-round pick, and a 2019 second-round pick. Look, I think redrafts are always a little bit messy because I don't think it's necessarily fair to go back with total perfect hindsight and say, oh, you could have drafted this player or this player. So the Giants still would have had to nail their picks. But given their needs at the time, I think acquiring more draft capital would have been the proper way to build. It would have been the correct way to facilitate a rebuild, using the resources and maximizing your return. I know the title of this video is literally called The Top 6 Giants Trades That Almost Happened, but I can't lie, I feel a little bit disingenuous putting this one on the list, knowing damn well Dave Gettleman was never ever going to trade out of that spot. So for this entry, consider it a trade that almost probably should have happened. Drafting a running back at 2nd overall was always a short-sighted approach, and it's becoming more and more obvious as the years have gone on. And now in 2024, I think even the fans who wanted the Giants to draft Barkley at the time are starting to see that. And there you have it, my list of the top 6 Giants trades that almost could have happened over the past 2 decades. Did I miss any? Please let me know in the comments if I did. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the channel, and thank you very much again for watching. I'll see you soon.